The planet is heating up.
The oceans are becoming filled with plastic.
Change starts now.
Change starts now.
We're on a countdown
To zero waste. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast. Here's your host, Laura Nash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ZWC. Today, we're speaking with Jussara Lee. She is a New York City fashion designer, and she is all about sustainability. Welcome to the show, Jussara.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
So let's talk a little bit about your fashion label. And I see something on your website that you're getting into wedding dresses, which is amazing, and they're so beautiful. But let's start a little bit about why you started a sustainable fashion label and some of the problems that you see with fast fashion that you want to solve.
Okay, so basically, I've been designing clothes since I moved from Brazil to New York. So I came to study and then started my own label right after finishing school at FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. And so that's when I started my journey. And I've been around for the past 30 years, believe me or not. It has been a very challenging 30 years of career because I actually have a small company. And as you probably know, and your listeners do as well, it's very much of an industry based on economy of scale. So if you make 100,000 of the same style of clothes, you will have a much less expensive product to manufacture.
Yeah.
In terms of the fabric, you buy things in bulk, you get one pattern made for all that, the same item. But we did the opposite, completely the opposite. Actually, we went very much to the extreme where we do one-offs, and wedding dresses, as you mentioned, thank you so much for the compliment, is one of them. It wasn't always like that. When I first started, I had a collection, and we had a wholesale operation where you book orders for these different collections that you present every year. And but I still had all the production done locally in New York City. And we exported fabrics because most of the fabrics were overseas, mostly in Italy, in our case. But this was still, in terms of size, it was still considered small, because even though I was doing wholesale and selling to department stores across the country, the United States,
wow.
which is a pretty big country. And then abroad, we had a pretty big following in Japan because they love fashion. And, store here, store in Hong Kong, store in... But anyhow, it still was
Wow.
considered small, because right after that is when things kind of exploded, and then the whole fast fashion took over. So in comparison to that, we were still small. But when fast fashion really took a huge part of this industry, I was already going into an even smaller scale than when I first started, wholesaling clothes. And I actually shut down my wholesale operation, and I started to do custom clothes. And that was the best decision that I made at that time, because there's no way you can compete with fast fashion. Like I said, it is an economy of scale. So they were making so much, and they still are making so many units of the same items, and just spewing all these different styles and prices that were so low, because they externalized most of the cost by putting the brunt really on the environment and on the human labor. So, and when I say externalizing, it's because they paid very, very low salaries and they usually outsource this kind of labor to countries that have a very poor reputation as far as human rights and workers' right is concerned. the conditions of that environment was also terrible, and there were horrible consequences. I don't know if you're aware of what happened in Rana Plaza a few years back, where the factories are all cracked, and the ceilings, the floors, and they kept telling the management until one day the whole thing collapsed, and
That's
there
the
was.
ceiling. Yeah, when the roof collapsed, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and they knew. Like there were people who knew about that, and you're right, they wouldn't do anything about it, and then a lot of lives were lost. It's very sad.
So
Um,
sad, exactly. So
yeah.
yeah, so that's the human, and then the environment, that don't necessarily have lawyers to defend them. So they abuse that too by just putting all the chemicals that are produced during the production of this massive amount of clothes into the oceans and the rivers and whatnot. So anyhow, back to my journey, I also thought at that point, I think I was already 10 years in the business. I just thought, I make collections every season, and I feel like people don't really need all these clothes that I'm making. So that's when I started to question the value of what I was doing and all the effort that I was putting into coming up with these collections. And then it just kind of only made sense to make less and spend more time on each piece and make them even more special so people would cherish them and take care of them and wear them with pride. And
Yes.
yeah, and like if maybe a button falls off, they don't just put in the donation bin, but they actually fix it, or the lining gets a little bit worn out on the inside, so you can change it. So I wanted to create that kind of relationship with the clothes. People think, oh, I want to be in a certain price bracket, and then they make so many compromises to squeeze into that price bracket. But I actually stopped doing that, and I said the price will be what the price will be. And because I'm making less, I don't have to convince so many people that
Mhm.
they're actually getting a better value for that price, which is high, than than buying all these clothes for a little fraction of it, but maybe they wear it a couple of times and either the thing falls apart or they just don't care about it because they bought for so little, so they can just throw it away. It really is more about doing something that you do it for love, for to put your creativity into something that you feel very proud of, in the sense that you're not destroying the environment by putting your collections out or expressing yourself. You're not creating over amounts of clothes in people's closet, which is also not a good feeling, to just know that people have all these clothes that they don't even wear. I don't want to be
Mhm.
one of those clothes. I don't want to be the one behind one of the clothes that are just stuffed in somebody's closet and then they just finally put, because they don't wear. You think about where the fabrics that you are creating your clothes come from, and how they were processed, where did they grow, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
how were they dyed, how did they come out with that color. And then you start thinking, oh, that doesn't sound too good, or okay, that sounds all right, and then you make your decisions based on true facts. And you just have to be a little bit more, you know curious, and investigate things, as opposed to just take things as they appear to be. So yeah, so that's sort of like how I am where I am these days.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Do you
Mhm.
have any examples of any kinds of fabric that you've sourced that's sustainable, or any dyes or anything like that when you're looking for fabrics to start your design?
Yes, in fact, you can be an ideologue, but nowadays it took a little bit of research and whatnot. But nowadays, I do use fabrics that are like cotton, that are grown from seed to shelf in the United States, organically, and then they are dyed with natural plants and roots and barks, and and we have a number of them that will give you this all these different beautiful hues. You get so enamored with the colors that come out because you don't quite know exactly what color it will be, which is also very interesting. There is always that surprise element, and it's so
Oh,
different.
so you actually dyed it yourself?
I have a friend who is in Philadelphia, so that's
Nice.
very close to us, and she has a proper setup for it, and she dyes all my organic cottons and wools and whatever I get my hands on that are locally produced or within the United States. And she uses madder roots, she uses the indigo flower. There is this beautiful plant, lac extract, that will give you this sort of like a beautiful berry color. So
Nice.
she does that. And that was a great finding too, that I got to her, and she's right here in Philadelphia because that's very close to New York. So I visited her. So we have a relationship with the people, everyone that who's involved on the making of a t-shirt, let's say, as opposed to just buying something that you don't really know how it was grown, and or that comes from across the oceans, which is a little bit more carbon footprint that I would like to have
Yeah.
to
Just
justify.
to ship it. Like,
Yes,
so all the things you talked about with labor and the dyes could be going to the river and you're using fossil fuels and all this stuff. But then, yeah, just getting it here on the barge is a big carbon footprint. So if you can get things more locally, but there are some
yes,
things that are grown overseas that are, pretty sustainable and stuff. And a lot of it does come from over there. It's cool that you have a friend in Philadelphia that's doing natural dyes. I've done a couple shows with people from Philadelphia. I went down there for a conference, and I was really surprised not to see a zero waste store because there is a good sustainability crowd
there
there,
is.
but yeah, I didn't see they don't have one yet, so I'm sure that'll come soon to the city.
I hope so, right?
Yeah. Have you been to Lauren Singer's shop in Brooklyn?
Yeah, she's a dear friend. We
Oh,
have,
really?
yeah, we have dinners together sometimes because my sister, we are from Brazil, right? I have a sister who has a Brazilian restaurant, and
Nice.
Laura and I, we love these appetizers. A yuca is a deep fried yuca stick.
Yep.
So we're always like, okay, when are we gonna have the yucas? But I like what she does.
Yeah, I was happy to go and see her store a couple years ago. It was pretty neat to see.
Yeah, and she has it all like sort of like display. And the other person
Yeah.
that's part of our little trio that I love is Zero Waste Daniel. Do you know?
Yay! He's been
Yay!
on the show. I visited him too. It was great. Yeah, he's awesome.
I commissioned him to do a Bruce Lee with all these fabric scraps that he works his magic, and it's so cool. You can totally see that is Bruce Lee.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a good scene down there, I think.
Mhm.
But you're doing wedding dresses, and I haven't ever talked about sustainable weddings. I've never talked about
Mhm.
sustainable dresses. Are you like the only person who's into sustainable wedding dresses, or tell us a little bit about this because I just love it. Like the dresses are just beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one. I don't like to claim any kind of title without making sure, but it is definitely a harder field to do the zero waste because traditionally, women when they're about to get married, or men when they're about to get married, they want something that they have this idea, or they have some clips and they have whatever, because we do custom, right? So they come with these ideas, and we have some limitations in terms of the fabrics because, again, if I can, I prefer to use piece silk, which is silk where the worm is not killed
Oh yeah,
after. Yes.
yeah.
So, like as I said before, you can be an ideologue because there's nowhere in the United States that produces silk. We don't have that kind of industry. So I do have a company in India that does the piece silk for us. We call it the Gandhi cotton, the Khadi cotton, because it's all made by artisans. Like the whole fabric is woven by hand by very traditional tribes, and it's quite expensive, which I think they should be. But there are limitations. So people, when they come for the wedding, they sometimes they want this sort of drape or a certain look, and the fabrics are a little bit, dresses are determined by the fabrics, right? So the way they're gonna drape and all that. So I have a little bit of like sometimes I have to work a little bit those angles, but we've made some beautiful dresses out of it. So there's no chemical treatment on this silk. Like I said, the worms, they don't kill the worms, and it's made in a very artisanal scale. I add another value, another environmental value to it, and it turns out to be this beautiful detail is there's absolutely zero waste. So all the leftovers, the little scraps, they are turned into textile again. And I apply a lot of hand stitching. So we have, actually, it was a collaboration with this wonderful designer who does hand smocking. So she took all my scraps of silks and laces and whatnot, and then she did this texture. She created texture by smocking them, and then we put them like we do a lot of mosaic, a lot of tiling, where we put all these pieces into to create textile.
Like
And
Zero Waste Daniel does?
it's like zero waste Daniel, but a different technique. Like
Yeah.
this technique is called hand smocking, and what Daniel does is stitching, right? Like he does a lot of the serging machine, and then he stitches all those
Yeah.
knits together to create a shape or whatever.
Yeah, the things that you make are really beautiful. And do you do a lot of things for like work, like working clothes? Like people have to go in the office every day and they want to look fashionable and they might need like a blazer or something. Do people come in
Exactly.
and
So that's what we do aside from wedding dresses, because it's really like the day they wear. So it's shirts, jackets, trousers, skirt. They're very classic and they're very basic, but the construction that we use is through tailors, like menswear tailors. So they make all our clothes. And these are, men, most of them are Italian or Eastern European, old men, because it's a very old tradition, and they make these clothes by hand, and it's just like the way you look at a jacket that is hand tailored and a jacket that's sewn by machine, and you might not see, because the difference is not so evident, but you put it on and how it goes around your neck, and the sleeves just has a little bit of a shape like that follows your arms. Your armholes are high, so you can actually move, and everything is fitted, but it doesn't feel tight, and you feel
yeah.
so composed. And I actually have clients that say, "Oh, when I wear your jackets, it makes me have a better posture."
Oh,
Because
nice.
it's highly structured. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably, I am probably one of the first, if not the only designers that use menswear tailoring for women's clothing. It was very hard to convince these tailors to make women's clothing because women have bust, waist, hips, whereas men is just like a block, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go up and down, in and out. So we had to develop. This was an old Italian tailor. I had to get his hours were like, he usually wakes up very early. He's in the office at 5 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock, he's gone. So I would come with espressos and be like, "Okay, Mr. Ciccarelli, can we now work on the pattern for women's?" And that's how it was, like pulling teeth. But I broke into that boys club, and was able to come up with a beautiful fit for jackets, for women's jackets, women's coats, and but still maintaining the foundation of the tailoring, of men's tailoring. So
Mm-hmm.
that's quite lovely. So we make tuxedos sometimes for lesbian couples, like they want to be sharp and be wearing a suit or a tuxedo as opposed to a dress. So we
Mm-hmm.
make them so lovely, and those are pieces that you can have forever. You should always have one good jacket as opposed to 10 horrible, mediocre ones. A jacket is very, very important to be hand tailored. I do think it's not an indulgence. It's almost like, if you're gonna have a jacket, it better be a hand tailored jacket.
That's some really good advice, yeah, because it's very versatile. You can wear it with skirts and pants and different things. So and it just makes you look really professional if you're going to.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you can even put it over like I don't know, sweatpants, but still you kind of puts it all together.
Totally. Yeah. You know what's so funny about, because you mentioned like the difference between men and women, like men typically in politics and whatever are always just wearing the same style of suit. And then women have like so much more of a playing field, I find, where they
Yeah,
have so much more freedom to wear professional looking clothes, but it's not just that rigid suit that the typical man would be expected to wear. So
right.
women can wear all different sorts of things, but sometimes that can be a bigger challenge for women as well who are in politics or who are in, these high levels where they feel they have to dress really, really, I don't know what the word is.
Sharp.
Yeah, like they feel that they want to feel good, they want to look good, that sort of thing. So yeah, jacket's a good piece of advice. Do you have any other advice for other people and that are listening who maybe want to have sustainable pieces? Like a jacket is a good idea. Do you think people should have like a piece of like maybe one formal thing or
I
or
think
um
getting dressed to me is sort of like you want to look put together. You don't want to put too much effort into it. I get dressed really fast because I don't want to spend time figuring out what I'm gonna wear. I just want to whatever I have in my closet, I want to put it on and always look sharp. So whatever you have in your closet should be that way. You have a smaller selection, reliable selection, because if you have your eyes closed, you're not in the mood that day to put a look together. Whatever you pick up is gonna do the job. So so I think that's important to have fewer, and it's been going on forever, this whole minimal approach to clothing, but it really works. My closet is so small and people always say that I look really dressed up, but you would not even believe I don't spend not even a minute getting dressed. But my biggest my biggest recommendation, and this might be make me very unpopular, is to just let go of the leggings. I just can't stand leggings, and it's so ubiquitous. It's
so cold. It gets so cold in New York City, right?
oh, it doesn't matter. The girls are all wearing leggings. They are so thin, and I find them so unattractive. And like when we were talking about what is the role of clothing is for you to get out there in the world and look decent, and so and look presentable, look sharp, look attractive. And I just can't stand the leggings. And also they're all made out of synthetic materials, and they're going to be sitting on a landfill forever, just like with the plastic bottles and all the plastic caps and whatever. They're gonna be hand in hand with those, and there's so many of them that people go through. So it's the synthetic materials that they come from, and where they don't go anywhere, or they get incinerated, which is going to create a lot of pollution. And it's just the look of it. It's not. It's like maybe it's only good for little kids. Anybody else, I think, looks really horrible. Even if you have a cute bubble butt, you don't want to have to expose it that way. So that's my opinion. I have clients that show up sometimes with legs, and I'm thinking, oh, I wish I could tell her. So I'm telling it, through the radio, through you, Laura. Now, and also, like, you're probably, you're trapped inside these synthetic fibers that don't breathe. It can't be good. And you're doing exercise and sweating, so all that pollution that your body is putting out through your skin, it gets trapped between your skin and the synthetic materials. It can be good. So that's my biggest takeaway in terms of that. But back to the fun part of getting dressed, a white shirt does help a lot, because you will always look really sharp in it, whether you put with jeans or whatnot, and
Yeah.
and. hmm
Yeah, I like that look. Yeah. So you went to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. So I always like to ask people on the show how you got into sustainability, but then also how did you get into fashion? Like, were you a little girl and were you making dresses on Barbies, or like
I
how did you get
know,
into
isn't that
this?
so funny, Laura, that all fashion designers seem to have a doll story, and I'm not
Really?
different than them, because I had a doll. I was about 6 years old, and that she was my first victim. So I would make her clothes
You're a
from like
victim.
the
Oh, no.
wet. From the rags, the pajamas that were full of holes, I would just turn that into something. And the interesting thing is that I had my best friend that we always played all together, and somehow we had a tiff and we weren't talking, and I put this super cute outfit on my doll that I made out of, I remember it was this little pajama that was just so threadbare, but I made it. I don't know what got to me. It just looked so cute. So I go and I buzz her and I show it to her. And she was like, oh my God. And she wanted to be my friend again. So I was like, there he goes. There where the power of fashion lies.
Oh.
And from that point on, I realized that it's a pretty powerful language. It's a pretty powerful way of communication.
Hmm.
So I got into it, and my mom, being a Korean, she's very much into education, and she was an immigrant in Brazil, but she had the vision to send me abroad to study fashion because we didn't have any university level schooling for fashion design at that time. Now we have plenty of them, but now when I was 16 and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, so she was a little bit scared that I would end up as a beach bum because I love the beach, and I was always hanging out with surfers on the weekends. And she's like, "Oh my God, this is not going right." And she sent me to New York, and I had this great opportunity, and then I ended up staying and getting married and having a child and opening my own business, and the
Nice.
rest is history.
That's amazing. Do you ever design anything for your child?
I do. Well, when she was little, the tradition I had is like every birthday I would make her an outfit.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, so it's so cute. So I have a box with the little outfits,
Oh,
and since she was a year old. And then it became more like, for her prom, I made her dress. I will definitely make her a dress when she gets married. She's 27 now, and she is in a serious relationship. So we'll see. But also we have very different styles, so I can't really make her everyday clothes. But that's how it went with my lovely Malka, my lovely daughter. Yeah. So next one is going to be a wedding dress.
that's so exciting, and you have the best company to do it because your wedding dresses are beautiful and sustainable, which is so amazing. So this is really cool. It's so cool that years ago I got to talk to Zero Waste Daniel, and then now I'm talking to you, and you guys seem to be, these famous fashion designers in New York City who are doing things so sustainable and focusing on it and really into it too.
Yeah, I actually think the best ideas come out of the necessity. Sometimes if you don't have the funds to start making clothes and whatnot, you can start thinking, well, there is so much waste where people just like throw away clothes. What if you, or like bed sheets, for example, everybody throws away the
Yeah.
bed sheets because they get, tattered and whatnot. So that all of that has opportunities, so many opportunities in it. You can take that bed sheet, give a nice cleaning, nice wash, do a beautiful natural dye, and here you have a huge piece of fabric for free, pretty much. And then you can start coming up with something beautiful from that piece of cloth, which was a bed sheet that was going to be discarded. So I think there are a lot of opportunities if people just think outside of the box instead of thinking,
Mhm.
oh, a fabric has to come on a roll from somewhere, that and actually look at the source of the where it all starts, which is the fabric, and then start thinking about where you can get that from, or create textiles out of things that are already exist.
Yeah, you can go to thrift shops, I found too, and find really nice, like I found a curtain one time that was really nice, and
Oh, I love thrift shops. It's like my favorite thing because
they're so
you
cool.
just find things, right? They're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, and it's so much variety, what you were saying in the beginning of the show, that it's cool to have unique pieces because if you just have there's like 500,000 shirts that are all the same, it's not as special. but you can still find special things in the thrift shop because there will usually only be one of them, right?
Exactly. It's so special and it's so fun to find something by accident. I love it. I love that whole experience.
So where can we find you? So jussaralee.com is your website, right?
That's correct.
If you want to check her out on Instagram too, it's just Jussara Lee. So thank you, Jussara. This has been really great.
It was a pleasure talking to you too, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That was Jussara Lee. She is a sustainable fashion designer in New York City.
Change starts now.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast.